It hasn't been long since Elden Ring came out and became my favorite game to have ever played. And between the gaping hole of emptiness left within my heart after I finished it, and the bullshit that's still going on in the world, it seemed like the perfect time to visit another From Software game that's hailed as the second coming of Christ. Bloodborne has a reputation, one that I wanted to experience myself. While Dark Souls and Elden Ring both have huge followings, I think the award for most dedicated following would still go to Bloodborne. If you were to take the percentage of people who played the game versus the percentage of people who state that this is their favorite game, from all the From Software games, Bloodborne would win. I wanted to find out why for myself, so I embarked on an unforgettable journey by moving my crusty hands and turning on the PS4. The game starts by me getting kidnapped by white children in London. I guess some things never change. In Bloodborne, you play as a hunter tasked with bringing an end to the beasts plaguing the city of Yharnam. In the beginning anyway, because towards the end you're committing genocide in a nursing home and fighting a gay tentacle monster trying to molest you. Be sure to level up your homophobic stat to do extra damage. I'm not gonna bother retelling everything that happens in the story because frankly, nobody fucking knows. But I am gonna tell you my experience, which I guarantee will be less confusing than having an honorable duel with a horse swinging a magical sword. The setting in Bloodborne is much more unique than every other From Software game this time around. You start off in the middle of a city filled to the brim with European architecture. The streets and buildings feel as if you're a little child exploring a neighborhood you're not welcome in, because you are. There's your local bullies, drunk fathers, and pets. But you continue since the haunting imagery somehow has a beauty to it. I dare say the level design in this is some of their strongest. And the main hub connects to each level so seamlessly that it almost seems worth it to die just so you can experience the level design. Almost. The world feels terrifying, as it should. You're running around in a beast-infected city, the werewolves tear you to shreds, the grotesque animals that pummel you to death, or the imagery of some of the enemies and bosses you encounter. All of that isn't the reason why this game's atmosphere works. The reason Bloodborne is so good at scaring you is because of these fucking crows. Yes, these things. Don't get me wrong. They die in one hit, they're weak, and they do no damage. They're crippled crows for fuck's sake. But you don't need health or damage to set up the atmosphere, because every single time you get close to them, they go. They stay still in groups and easily camouflage themselves. So when you go next to them to pick up an item, they jump scare to death. Imagine if they didn't add that sound every time the crows attack. It wouldn't be nearly as impactful. Creative enemies like this are throughout the entire game. The first time I went to pick up this item and the wheelchair behind me started laughing and then firing a minigun, I almost lost my shit. Any game that has you scanning every corner for crippled crows or hitting old men in wheelchairs just to make sure they're not alive is a game that has fantastic atmosphere. But the atmosphere can only do so much. The gameplay is where Bloodborne shines. This game has such a unique concept on its gameplay that there's legit 1 hour long documentaries breaking down why it's awesome. Unlike their previous Soul series where there's a lot of weapons that end up doing the same thing. Instead, there's only a few weapons in Bloodborne. It seems that they focused on quality and feel of each weapon more than the quantity of them. And it paid off massively. Each weapon looks so fucking cool and plays so differently that you get a new experience each time you change weapons. It's partly because of the fact that there's trick weapons. This is a genius mechanic they put into the game, and I'm sad none other of their games have implemented it. Each weapon has a trick to it, which makes them transform into a whole different machine. There's a mace that turns into a pizza cutter, a spear that's secretly a rifle, a machete that's exactly like the sword of Renji from Bleach, and then there's the boom hammer. Yes, you heard me correct. A hammer that goes. Since there's a trick component to each weapon, there's a million different moves you can execute with them. And that's just one weapon. All weapons have this much depth to them. Not to mention the guns. Yes, I forgot to mention the guns. You have guns. Now ordinarily that would be pretty significant, but in this game, guns are just an annoyance. You would think that they would do more damage, but they just tickle enemies. They're meant to be only used for parrying. meaning you have no shield. You can no longer be a little bitch and hide behind a shield, but instead you have to exchange in fast-paced combat, where timing your attacks is everything. All of this combined results in some of the best gameplay imaginable. Whoever thought of this combat system needs to get their dick sucked. And speaking of sucking dick, the bosses. Don't even get me started on the bosses. As usual, the bosses in Bloodborne are also fantastic. I would even go out so far as to say that the bosses in Bloodborne are more creative. A child beating you up with a placenta, a middle-aged man that's not in a wheelchair, that's new, and this thing. Although my favorite boss and moment by far in the entire game is Lady Maria. She's such a cool boss. From presentation and introduction to music to the fight itself. Even the old ladies you end up fisting are enjoyable in their own way. Don't worry about what I said. It'll make sense eventually. I do have just one gripe about it though. I know I'm gonna sound like a filthy basement dwelling League player when I say this, but the bosses, they were too easy. That's my only complaint. Maybe I'm just too good. Maybe I'm just amazing. But none of the bosses took me more than 10 tries to beat. None. This was my first time playing Bloodborne, and I went into it practically blind. I didn't know what I was going to encounter. I hadn't seen any videos about it. I expected to get pounded in ways I didn't think possible. That's what's supposed to happen. I'm gonna really quick flash the bosses that I beat on the first try. The first time I ever encountered them, I beat all of these bosses. And then these are bosses that I beat in 2 tries. I was counting my deaths because I thought it would be fun, and this is the final tally. I beat Ludwig, the 3rd hardest boss in the entire game, in 2 tries. Less than it took me to beat 2 geriatric old women to death. I say it's impressive and concerning. The bosses are the staple of every From Software game. The reason Bloodborne elicits such a strong reaction from players is because of its horror. Yes, this is a horror game. I mean, all of their games are a horror game. But the feel of Bloodborne is very subtly but significantly different from all their other From Software titles. It is full of cosmic horror, and more than the bosses, more than the environment. What makes you feel this cosmic horror most of all are the NPCs, the people who live permanently in this world. Everyone is miserable. The people portray a world in which you have no control, whereas in Dark Souls or Elden Ring, some NPCs have happy endings and make the world seem full of hope. Looking at you, One-Yin Knight. For Bloodborne NPCs, there are no happy endings. This entire world seems to have no hope. No matter how many people you encounter and try to save, they're not gonna end up any better than miserable. And this is why the fan base is so polarizing. Bloodborne doesn't hold any punches. It shows you that you have no control over anything but your own effort. When you continue throughout the story, you come across many inhabitants of the city still alive and sane. You can choose to tell them a safe location of your hideout or not. Slowly but surely, the main hub starts getting more people living together with their own quirks and their own little personalities. When I was playing through the game, I came across this dude decapitating body and told him to go to the safe location where everyone else was. I mean, he looks like a gentleman. What could go wrong? I'm sure this won't have any negative consequences whatsoever. Soon enough, people start dying one by one, and my dumbass has no idea why. I thought it was just the normal progression of the game because I went in blind. So I just continued killing bosses. The fact that he always seemed to have blood on him and gave me meat didn't tip me off to any suspicion either. I know, I'm stupid. But once everyone died, I figured it out. And in my fit of rage, I tried killing him.
Oh, you are sick puppy. And now this. And you talk of beasts. You captains of the real killers. You call me a beast. A beast. What would you know? I didn't ask for this.
That line hit hard. You see, the beasts I've been hunting the entire time used to be people. These aren't just some random animals that needed to be killed. These were people who turned because of my action. Despite the fact that he was a beast, despite the fact that he murdered everyone, despite the fact that he was trying to kill me, he was right. They all died because of my incompetence. The true beasts are indeed the hunters. In my eyes, this moment is the happiest ending you can get. A painless death to all who are suffering, including the very beast right in front of you. Remember when I said that there are no happy endings? If I hadn't invited the murderer into our home, everyone would have gone insane in their own ways. Some would have gotten dementia, obsession, despair. In a way, getting everyone killed because of my incompetence was the best thing that could have happened. Moments like these is why Bloodborne has such a dedicated fanbase. None of their other games are willing to go so far. None of them will upset and take away control to such a degree. And that's exactly why the moment of hope you do get at the end of the game ends up meaning so much more than you ever could have imagined.